come to listen to an artist talk about her journey. It's very heartwarming indeed. There are lots of artists here who've embarked on their own journeys, and it's always extremely, I think, edifying, as well as to have that sense of recognition of certain common experiences that artists have on their own as they embark on their own trajectories. And also, I'm sure a lot of you have come to listen to the writer. So the artist and the writer together in this session, I think, make very clear the kind of bonds that LLF hopes to promote in Lahore. At one time, these bonds were very strong, but somewhere we lost them. But I think we are coming together again. It's a great honor and a great privilege to have on either side. Firstly, Faiza Butt, artist whose origins are in Lahore, who lives in London now, but comes back regularly to share with her audience her own ideas. And Kamila Shamsie, who is from Karachi, also now lives abroad in England and also comes back with great regularity. Both of them, I think, share more things than they realize. And we'll hear about some of them this evening. But first, I'd like to commence by talking to Faiza, since this session is really about our journeys. And to a certain extent, I was part of the beginning of her journey. So Faiza, let's talk about those early years at NCA. And I noticed certain things about what you were interested in as a student. Your third year and fourth year. What struck me was your gravitating towards lives of women. And the other thing I found interesting was how it crisscrossed with what everyone was reading then. And that was really the work that was coming out of Latin America. Magical realism was something that everybody was reading. And your work was sort of, in certain ways, suggesting both things. Would you like to talk about that?
Yes, I think I'll fill you in on that. But first, I want to thank the LLF team for inviting me, and I cannot believe that I'm sharing stage with the two giants. I'm completely dwarfed by the presence of Salima, Hashmi, and Kamila, Shamsie. Just wanted to warn you that I'm an artist, not an intellectual or philosopher. So just set the bar low for expectations of the smart things that I'm going to say. But I'm going to try to amuse you and keep you engaged. I think the point which Hashmi's raised is where exactly the journey starts. I was at NCA in the early 90s, and it was such an oasis, a little haven of cultural evolution compared to what was happening around at that time. Just come out of the Zia era, and the whole education system was corrupted that I was part of. So my memory of what education I had before NCA doesn't register anymore. I think it became null and void the moment I came to NCA. And that memory is so amazing and dear, really, due to the mentoring and the tuition. And it keeps coming up in the various talks that is still available there and that was there at that time. My year was somehow very gifted, I would say, and the whole year has shown in Pakistan history amazing artists like Imran Qureshi and Risham Saeed and Mani Abdi and well, to a lesser extent myself, to say the least. And there is a reason for that. And I would say without hesitation that the reason was our teachers. Ms. Hashmi's just come back from RISD, and she was sort of fresh after her course, and she was full of enthusiasm. She was constantly going beyond her duties as a teacher to educate us, to connect us to this wider debate out there. And when I say constantly going out beyond her parameters of her duty is that we showing up at her house at times near midnight, showing her work, knocking at her door, she coming out in her pajamas saying, yes, yes, it's fine, carry on, keep doing it. It was really to that extent. And that inspired us, not only because she was a true role model, very different from my parents, from my mothers, and sort of really looked up to her, that how, I remember her saying that women have intellectual needs as well, and I thought it really ran home with me. It was a beautiful thing for me to hear. Looking at the patterns that were happening beyond my family, where you studied to an extent, and then you get married, and then you're expected to have this dip of the comfortable life as a parent for the rest of your years. So as I said, rounding back, so our teachers were just so inspiring, and their support was just exemplary, and that inspired us all, and this energy was created that has produced these artists that you hear of now. And somehow the foundations of Pakistani contemporary history were strengthened. They had been laid, but they started to develop. And I would say without hesitation, if that moment in the early 90s hadn't happened, we had not arrived at where we are sitting now. So I was in my late teens when I joined NCA. I was very young, and my life experiences were, from school to home and back to school. And then, as I said, NCA opened these doors for me. I think at that time, there were no events like this. When I studied at Slade in the West, they used to ask me that, so what were the art galleries you used to go to, and what were the seminars and lectures available to you, what were your inspirations? And I said that there was none of that available. But there was a lot of raw material in terms of social structures, emotionality within those social structures, politics of those social structures, as well as life around you, as vernacular popular culture. I'm not sympathetic to the word kitsch, because somehow I think there is some claim to some snobbery in there, but I would say that popular culture in the sense that informal outsider art that surrounded us, was everywhere, that surrounded me in Lahore at that time. I mean, I was going around Lahore and I was trying to spot hand-painted cinema posters, which are, thing of the past now. And remember in Lakshmi Chowk, there used to be mammoth scale, these posters, showing this scenario of the violence that's going to follow, and blooded heroes and women in wet clothes, and it used to fascinate me. It really laid the foundations of how my narrative is still constructed, of how you can create stills and whet the appetite for promise of something in someone's head of a bigger story. So I'm an image maker. I also come from a Kashmiri household, and I always say that because my father always resisted Zia and his Islamization, and our sense of identity was not Pakistani or Muslim, but Kashmiri, which is kind of cultural and ethnical. But this is how we eat, we are non-conformist, and these are the ways we live. So I was very fortunate in that way that I didn't have the very rigidity of that kind of a very strict faith system behind me that I feel remains a barrier in people's lives. It's very difficult to undo that. So I guess I was porous and positively gullible, and then I had these inspiring teachers. First, at a personal level, we were 5 sisters. My mother waited for a very long time to have a son. She had 5 daughters along the way. And although she was kind of very progressive and revolutionary for her years and her time, it turned into a memory of her longing for a male heir. And I think the roots of feminism were laid at that time. I mean, as girls, we were forces of nature. We were just very sharp, and we got it from our mother. And we were always told that you're going to study all the way, and a man shouldn't be your financial plan. And marriage was never idealized. So all those values were there. But my earlier works were, if they have to be summed up, then they focused on feminism. I remember Hashmi once gathered us up and put that movie on called Women at the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown. It was just such a vivid, amazing moment. I can still remember running around early in the morning, trying to organize the equipment, showing us this alternative cinema that we would never have access to otherwise. I keep mentioning these things because they just show you what they do to one in the long run. Not that I'm the finest of examples, but yes, the sincerity and goodwill, I could never forget that, because I went to Slade and I studied my MA there, and have compared the two systems. I still compare them, and I sometimes feel they don't even compare. They are so different, as how much I value my time at NCA. So what I do is, shall I start with one of the images from that time? Now, these are one of my earliest of works. And this one, I must mention this technique that I painted that in, and it's in egg tempera. And once again, I was actually inviting one of her colleagues, her own teachers from Bristol, who came and did this workshop with us at NCA and taught us these Renaissance methods of painting. All we knew was oil paint comes from the tube, and this is what we painted till then. And I was so inspired by this technique of egg tempera, which is using the egg yolk. This is a pre-oil paint method of painting. Lots of pre-15th century paintings are painted in that technique, where pigment and egg yolk is binded together to paint with a medium. So I created this piece, and this piece is, I mean, I'm very young of age. I'm coming of age, but I'm still, my exposure is very limited to the world. And I was looking at truck art at that time as well. Because I think post-Zia, the truck art became the very potent tool of propaganda. You know, the whole Islamization happened, and the imagery in the truck art kind of evolved. It became quite macho and sort of full of subverted meanings. Can we have the image again? I'll move on from that image to this. So the images were recurring images of my grandparents' family that lived in the walled city. So my parents were trying to be progressive, trying to educate their children, live outside the walled city. We would occasionally go and visit my family in the walled city. And the urban culture is so very interesting. I remember there used to be this shop selling dairy. And in talking feminism, in talking conscious gender, there were these kind of, and dairy was this kind of food for the giants, and kind of very macho kind of promise somehow we go in there, it's health and everything. So these posters of these pahalwans, these burly wrestlers on the walls, and that used to fascinate me because they were comparable to the popular cinema posters. Because they kind of told the story of the bigger pahalwan and the smaller pahalwan and the lesser pahalwan, literally smaller in size. So I sort of used to take it all in. And here is a woman, not only small in stature, but smaller in size as well, with almost disabled legs, perched on the legs of a mighty pahalwan, of course. So the narratives are very easy to read in these works, because that's what I was aiming for. I wanted to tell a story. I wanted to kind of get things off my system a little bit. And the next one. So these are some of the earlier examples, but I will always point to the narrative in it, and there is myself in it, and there is this whispering woman as my self-portrait, and there's a flying cherub, this boy that's out of reach, that's always sort of flying away, and I was sort of discussing my mother's wishes in it. So it just kind of kept coming in the works. We have the next image, please. I'll go through these quite quickly because they're kind of really earlier works, and then moving into what we're doing now. This is another one from that time. This is when things are kind of slightly changing, and this was in my fourth year, and I started to work on paper, and that was quite an interesting moment because working on hardboard or canvas, I'm moving into paper, and because I just thought that it can take so much, and it allows you to be a bit more experimental than a rigid surface. And this is a moment that I think still continues in my practice, where I'm very intrigued by a photographic image, how it's constructed. Somehow if you look at a photographic image scientifically, it's very close to how a painted or a drawn image is constructed. It's gone through a process of layers joined together, whether they're pixels or whether they're Buddha marks in miniature. And my challenge remains in how I infuse this mechanically made image with something that's done limits of human hand. So in that way, the drawing is done on top of a photograph. And these kind of idealized faces are coming from the European history, because it's very interesting because till that time, our main exposure was to European painting up to the 15th century for the books and the materials that were available. We didn't have any internet or the kind of resources that you have available now. So what surrounded me, or what was art to me at that time, was I was trying to be experimental, within that, we have the next one. So that's another piece of work at that time on water. And once again, using the popular images for my inspiration that was available to me at that time, I was looking at idealized image of the female on these locally made cosmetic bottles. Like there was this thing called, I don't know if they still sell it, Tibet Snow whitening cream, and the woman on it was photographically printed, but her representation was very close to sort of late Persian miniatures. And I thought that kind of connection of late Persian miniature aesthetics of female coming into photographic image was very interesting. So, so always this reference to heavens, and this kind of astronaut on the top, the suns, the solars, the stars, the area of knowledge where we really hit our limit remains consistently in my work, and you would see it in later works as well. Yeah, the next one, please. So there's another one from that piece. This is just happened just before I went to Slade. And once again, I was looking at printed image, which is drawn and hence mass printed. And this is John Tenniel's Alice in Wonderland illustration. And it remains a story which is for children, really, but it remains very, very dear for me for what it holds in its metaphors and meanings. And I would point out once again that children's illustrations are something that really inspired me. When I talk about outsider art inspires me, informal sources inspire me, then the children's illustrations are also a part of it. Because at a grand scale where I had those cinema billboard posters available to me, at a minuscule scale, when my father used to open the Times in the morning, the newspaper, I used to always look out for the little cartoons that used to come in it and try to copy them. And I used to love the humor in them and the simplicity. And there's no ego in them because they are to be, they're meant to be amusing people or being meaningful to people outside the core of arts. And that will, that sincerity is always something that holds a lot of appeal for me. So I'm looking at phoenixes and images from the Persian miniatures, and I'm trying to infuse them or create a fusion with Alice in Wonderland illustrations of John Tenniel's from the Victorian age. You have the next one, please. Now, this is quite interesting because I'm working in that way. I think they were quite kind of experimental. I'm not trying to develop a method or a style or a novelty or a technique until then. And then, as I said, that our teachers were sort of very driven for us to have more exposure, and an opportunity came up for me where I was accepted at the MA at Slade, and I can still remember how much Ms. Hashmi supported me in terms of making sure that I'm provided for once I'm there, and it's a very expensive affair. I can always remind people that 10, 12, 13 years back, the Slade fee itself was about £25,000, and the budget all in all was £60,000, and it was quite a lot of money at that time. And I always used to say, well,
I'd like to step in at this time because I think that we should make this point about the fact that there is no support for people of modest means to go abroad and to get an education, which furthers complements what they have done over here. But you were helped by a private group,
yes.
Thanks to a couple of people stepping in, like Kamila.
I remember being on the phone with her and saying, you know what, I'm going to pack this in. I don't think I can continue anymore because another fellow student has come along with me and he has to do that. And I thought it would be absolute treasure that double of us could see our education through. And so Hashmi said, leave it with me.
It was the Coppola group who supported you
with the first year.
But I also need to mention that we were running around trying to find patronage, and that's something that I think that we need to dwell on, the fact that there is not enough patronage for people who are wanting to study art or wanting an art education elsewhere. And Faiza had to go into all kinds of avenues to try and quickly make enough money. This is an ongoing story, Nazish is sitting here, she knows how we struggle to support other artists and calling up friends and looking at their bank balances and saying, okay, you can put away this much, You can turn this into pounds and you can support so-and-so. But I remember you getting up on a pair of ladders and painting on a wall. Wanted to tell us something about that?
Yes, so so my parents obviously not in a position to pay that sort of money, and you know, I'm trying to find money, and I mean, Miss Hashmi's values are very British, I must say, her work ethics. She might be based in Pakistan, but she's always like, get off your backside and do something for yourself as well. So, but having said that, I remember he found me this commission with the late Governor Salman, and I had the good fortune to know him around that time because he's a great admirer of arts, always supporting the artist, trying to buy where he can. And he had this wall by his pool, and he said that after done the banking and all the hard day's work that he used to do at that time, he said, this is my little pleasure, I swim, and I look at this wall, and I wish there was something on this wall that takes me away. So I sat down with us, okay, he said, I've seen your work, there's a lot of flora and fauna in it, a lot of fantasy in it, can we create something fantastical that really takes me away from this brick wall? So we came up with this idea that we're going to create this, you know, enchanted, strange forest, which has a touch of how I think too, as well as what he wants. And that remains, even before he passed away, I had a little conversation with him, and I remember him saying, he was really congratulating me, you've done well, Salima did the right thing of recommending you. And he said, you know, but I have your biggest painting ever. You know, I hope it's still there, that I have to go and see that wall one of these days. Is it still there? Okay, well, that's good to know. I made sure it stays there because I really did the preparation to the book of priming the wall, and we had it all done. So, yes, I mean...
But did you find that your Slade experience, I mean, in terms of, well, your painting, I mean, how did you find that those 2 years of working there? I'm saying that because, you know, Kamila is sitting here quietly and comfortably. And I'm just interested in, you know, that experience when you are away and you're in a totally different environment, which is, you know, you are enrolled as a student elsewhere. I'm interested in your, you know, looking back at what you had come from and what you were learning in the classroom. And like, you know, the two of you to kind of compare that also as to that experience and what it means to go away and study elsewhere.
Kamila, you want to comment on that?
I should first say that, you know, I just reminded to talk about funding. I was helped by the assassination of Zia-ul-Haq in a very roundabout manner because I was accepted into Hamilton College in upstate New York, and there was a special scholarship for Pakistani women, which was set up by the family of Arnold Raphael, who was the American ambassador who was on that plane. It was slightly discomforting for you to know that, you know, you were getting this financial opportunity because this plane blew up. It would be much nicer if there was, you know, if there was a system here where people could get support from. The thing that really made my university education wonderful was the Kashmiri. The poet Aha Shahid Ali was teaching at Hamilton. And, you know, it was one of those ironies of history that I had to go to a village in upstate New York to meet this man from Srinagar. And otherwise, who knows how we would have met. And because of Shahid, actually, you know, I had a very different, because he was my first teacher of writing. So even though I was in America, you know, Shahid, who had translated affairs, whose reading included Nazim Hikmat, and, you know, poets not from the Anglo-American tradition, Rich Sauce, you know. So I sort of felt that through Shahid, I got the world, but through a Desi prism coming back at me, and he would say, these are the people you need to read. And because he was also at the time working on one of the most extraordinary collections of poetry, The Country Without a Postcard, which was about Kashmir, and the points Shahid kept making was, when you come from difficult and damaged places, those get into your work, but they can never be an excuse for sloppy work. You can't say, because I'm writing about this important thing, my work is important. And I sort of felt that my beginning to think politically was able to, in terms of writing, I was able to do in upstate New York because of this Kashmiri I found there. But I'm really interested to know, because we are of that generation who grew up with Zia, and grew up with all the censorships around it. And I'm really interested to hear you talk about some levels of self-censorship. Because there's one, the level of political self-censorship, because of course we grew up in a time when it would be dangerous to say certain things. But then there's also, as women, the things that are social taboos. So I'd be really interested to hear, I know I've now dragged away from your questions.
No, that's fine.
I've been sitting here with you, looking at the images.
I think I find it all, but Yadi, of course, is very, very unforgiving, in the sense that my parents are always hoping that they want to educate the girls all the way, this dream. Send me to a Christian school, because, of course, they had better results, all-girls school, and they seem to have better values. And then that happened. And I think I was very young at that time even, but the first thing that hit me, because this presence, this monstrous presence that he created of his ideologies, was he changed the uniform for my school. And we used to be a very smart little pinafores, and there was no gender element to the uniform. Children are sort of androgynous at the primary level. And all of a sudden we were told to wear headscarves and cover our legs. So we kind of became aware of being women or girls. And I think my parents would find that really irritating. And I think each time I kind of ask myself, because you see, I always say that Britain is a kingdom, and their political sensitivity is very different to somebody from Pakistan, to the kind of grind we go through and we're still going through. So to be understood there was very hard for me, that if I say I'm a feminist, it's a bit of an F word there. I said, okay, she's got issues, she's premenstrual, what's wrong with her? But they don't understand that from the grassroots level of my uniform changing into something that we used to follow it and drag around on our legs, and then the lessons changed. Because it was the school had quite a kind of secular outlook, and the kind of focus was on values and discipline, old-fashioned way. But there were steps taken on principle to insert Islamization as to rub the people of minority faith the other wrong way around. Like if there was kind of dinya inserted into the curriculum, which Christian girls have to sit through as well. The swimming pool was closed down. Somehow it was considered non-Islamic because God knows why. So I guess, but I always remind myself that, you see, my parents did not have material wealth, but they had cultural wealth. And I'm so grateful for that. My father was always buying books for us. We had read the classics before we were 10. My father was a professor of literature, and they idolized knowledge. And although, we wouldn't eat meat every day, but we had enough journals coming through the door for us to have a nose in one all the time. So he resisted Zia, and he was transferred to Bandung and punished for that, because he was leading the student unions, and when Islamic Jamaita was introduced and unions were banned, he stood up against it. And he was transferred away from his family, and we really suffered, and there was always a man intelligence outside the door. But in my backdrop, to rebel and to be non-conformist was there. Hence, I'm very grateful that my foundations have always been where I question something. And yes, so I'm sort of going back to your idea of this Zia and his bastardization of the culture, and calling Pakistan Islami, Jamhuriya Pakistan to start with. In a way, sharpened our senses as well. Because, they say that had the Spanish Civil War not happened, Picasso would not have painted Guernica. So I kind of can't help comparing that when a tragedy like at that scale happens and the cultures become subverted and mutated, then a core group becomes sharper and more sensitive. So in a way, great theatre happened in the 80s.
Yeah, so when you went to Britain and then you had that Asian girl who's inserted, can you have that image again, please?
Can we have the slide again? He's texting me.
So then there was a different kind of politics that you encountered.
That's right. I came to Britain, and I must say that if you are a little bit of a non-conformist in Pakistan during my time, the obvious judgment was that she's trying to be Western. You're not allowed that if you don't quite conform to the kind of frame of the mold here, you might be somebody who is herself a shade of grey and might not be the other side. Because when I went to the other side, I realized I don't fit with the other side either. At all. And they kind of, at Slate, I kind of came with my issues and ideas of feminism, they're kind of looking at me and they'd say, but that's political, as if political is a P word. But I said everything is political. So there was, I kind of really put it to British culture is very kind of, I'm married to one, but I still don't get it. It's in layers. Hashmi would probably know, but as I said, I was neither this or the other, so I'm very proud to be the odd one in a way. And anyway, so I came to Slade, and I must say that in the late 90s, the Slade faculty was a bit of a fossil. They've been there since the 60s, and I had stupid questions asked all the time. Some of them they were wonderful painters and deep thinkers, but their life experiences was they've travelled as much as from Scotland down to the south. So I would get asked questions like, so Lahore has roads, you're all set. I say yes, Lahore has got roads. And then I thought that if you are not clear if Lahore has roads or not, then obviously you have an idea of how much I know, perhaps. But once again I said that, I'm one of those who always thrives in conditions like this. I am one of those minds, I believe. I sort of, first of all, I'll talk a little bit about my technique because I think that's novel and interesting. When I came to Slade, I felt that in the 60s that they were still idealizing New York School of Painting, abstract expressionism, this kind of gestural way of working, and I find it quite natural to think of the rock stars like Jackson Pollock and de Kooning and chunky chunks of paint on enormous canvases and practicization of canvas and paint. And I kind of resisted that. Not only that I didn't have the resources and means to buy material at that bulk, physically I was the one who couldn't quite do it. Because boys were always having an advantage going down there, building up the largest canvas because they have the brawn, and when they'd show up with that canvas, somehow that was married. And I thought, okay, I'm going to have to find a way to rival this. So I said, I'm going to make something which I can make. It will be so ambitious, so labor intensive, so detailed that it will be as good as a very large canvas. And also, I was questioning this idea, and then that little bug was put into my head with Ms. Hashmi's tuition, where she was always provoking us to look at our region, his region history, be inspired by it, and make comparisons. So I went to Slade and I thought that no, the New York School and the kind of modernism of the West is not the art history of the world. It's just that it had the hierarchy. And art history is being given a place at the bottom drawer. So I'm going to look back at my origin and find methods and ways which I take into the contemporary idiom. So being a Pakistani is a quality I bring. It's not something I want to mask and conform to the system that was dominant at that time. I would like to point out one little thing before I go further into my technique, that I am an image maker. My work is very easy to read, and this is my intention, that is my will. It gives me the greatest pleasure if people engage and appreciate work from the outer core of the arts. I think, because whenever I sense ego, or artistic ego, or a degree of refinement which makes something boring, it's all debatable, it doesn't interest me. I don't have judgment over it, but it doesn't interest me. So I'm an image maker, and I want to remind you about the power of that self-imposed isolation. And they have a very fossilized way of dressing, which is kind of romanticized based on some sort of memory of how their parents used to dress in the 70s. And there's this subculture which is in a bubble, which doesn't interact with the wider society. And I was kind of really excited coming from Pakistan, wanting to know everything and be everyone. And I just couldn't believe, and I wanted to know why that is. Why is there this self-imposed isolation? Why is there fear of not wanting to mix? You are Muslim, fine. It doesn't mean that you should isolate yourself from anyone who's not of your faith system, and I didn't get it. Then when I started teaching, I started to look deeper into it, and I realized that maybe it's just a veneer that indicates that they're not gelling, they're not mixing. Underneath it, there is interaction and mixing happening, but it's invisible. Like I had this student of mine, Rima, who was they are incredible, some of these kids who are British Asians from Muslim backgrounds. They are so much more mature and far more facets to their personalities than I tell you most of you have. I would say that. Because in their household, the parents are kind of born again, they're minorities, they're clinging to the values 120%. So they go home, they put their Arab-like outfits on, Jummah prayers and the rest of it. And then they come out and they mix with other cultures in society, with their schools and colleges, and they're like chameleons in their dad. They become street credible and they start smoking. And I thought, they're 17 years of age, I don't have to do all that. And I thought it's pretty remarkable. And this isolation that I'm assuming is very much on the cover of the book. And I've applied to the wider society, where I always challenge this idea of, I always train myself when I look at something, I look deeper into it, and I don't judge it for what I see or what it appears to be. And I expect it from the art students that they should always question what lays underneath and try to look deeper, regardless of someone's wearing a hijab or not a hijab or whatever they're dressed as. So there was this Salima who was a big fan of Madonna, and she used to part dress in Arab kind of hijab and part in Madonna, but she was wearing it like that. And I just found it fascinating. So she sort of appeared in my work, one of my works. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, after that, the 9/11 happened and hit the wall. You know, it was just incredible. Because I think I feel very fortunate in a way to go through that social renaissance that happened since that tragedy that happened in New York, of how it affected the youth in the West and perhaps formed opinions of, or created the Muslim idea of the Muslim world, which is just an idea. And how this idea that the Muslim platforms, that they are objecting at what's happening in the West, and hence there were these attacks and the rest of it. Because these young people I was teaching in East London, they all of a sudden overnight became born again. They were already at that stage where they were teenagers, so, you know, when someone becomes punk or gothic or, I don't know, I dyed my hair, and some of them became Muslims, born again, so they started dressing in certain ways, and I sort of witnessed that. Now, since 9/11 happened, I'm based in London, and I'm sort of quite homesick, and I'm constantly kind of in touch with the news happening back home. And consistently bad news are pouring in, and this kind of whole thing of bombs start to go off in the mall. And I tell you, when the news reaches you remotely, you know, it's mutated and it's amplified, and it becomes just that. The whole thing becomes just that. And it's impossible to see another facet of reality. I started also being home started turning into memory, into something which now sits in the bank of memory. And memory is a very strange area because it's not entirely reliable. You know, memory is like dreams. There's no linear story to it. It tends to be in pockets or in sequences which are not necessarily connected together. So I used to have this mental image of very near my home, a bomb went off, and my brother gave me a very graphic account on the phone that went off, and then some children were found dead, and some limbs were laying around, and you know, one of those vegetable carts blown to pieces. And being an artist, I had, you know, an imagery started to form in my head. It's like artists tend to say that when we imagine trauma, we tend to paint rosy colors in it to cope with it. Because if you look at the actual image of a bomb going off, it's very dark, ugly, and black. So I started creating, to be coping with this traumatic news that are coming in every day, I started creating these images of these tragedies happening as they happen, in a very kind of dramatic still, which is almost like a cinematic still, recalling back to the posters I was looking at when I was very young. So this is an image of a suicide bomber exploding himself. His face is masked. There's this mushroom clouds as an ultimate reference to tragedy of war keeps coming in my work. And what's going up in the air around him is my world as well, because I was a parent by that time. So there's a nappy going up in the air, there's these cupcakes, and objects of rubbish, consumed objects that you find rubbish also feature heavily in my work. Because this is actually the feminist aspect of my narrative, where I was working as an artist, and I'm a parent as well. There's very little help. So my heart and mind is with my work, but I'm doing really boring things with most of my time. I'm kind of tying rubbish bags and I'm putting them outside. And one day, most of my day went towards domesticity, and I looked at the rubbish bag and I saw the breakfast, the lunch, the tidying up, the dinner. And I was looking at those objects that I had consumed and gone through in a frenzy as a parent in a whole day. And I thought, this is like a page of a diary. And in my frenzy, I haven't noticed that a milk bottle that comes in a perfect shape, and I squeeze it and throw it away, I don't notice the transformation it takes from a shape into a form to an object. And I thought that's a very interesting aesthetical twist to bring into my work as a page of my diary as a parent. So they feature in my subliminal references to as a woman, a parent, as an artist. They feature quite heavily in my work. This is another piece. It's called Moderate Fantasy Violence. It's to do with parenthood, surprisingly enough, because my husband, who's British, has these ideas as a parent, got quite strict. He's got from that kind of background. And the problem is that since the world was in turmoil after 9/11, a lot of graphic images were coming in the newspaper in the West as well. And I find it fascinating because my son, I remember, he was about 8. He was sitting there, a newspaper on the table, and he's looking at an image of a man, I think he was in Congo, he's come out of the bush, and he's served someone, and he's holding a hand. And he was actually looking at it, and he's very disturbed by it, obviously. And he's saying, "Mommy, is it really what it is?" And I said, "Yes, it is." So I changed the topic because I find it very difficult to discuss that with children, of course, because they get very traumatized by it. So we have the newspapers with no marking or rating or cautions on it coming to the family table. But when it comes to fantasized, constructed violence, like the cinema, there's very strict rating. So there's this U, there's R, there's this 9, 10, 12, 15, and I find it very strange because that's very sterilized, sanitized violence that you see in the cinema, in movies. So I was looking at a movie that my children wanted to watch, and the rating was moderate fantasy violence. And I found it so, I thought it was like a joke. First of all, the combo of the 3 words together, moderate violence, and it's not extreme violence, violence can be moderate. And it's fantasy violence. It's such a beautiful little ground that we all fall on to get away from real. So this is called moderate fantasy violence. And this is Rudy Giuliani, who's the New York mayor, and the whole atrocity happens. And I play with these tricks where I take, it's very photographic, it's almost photoreal. I took the eyes away and I introduced the mushroom clouds. So it kind of becomes a cartoon, almost humorous, as well as creates meaning. And if you notice his necktie, it's got rubbish in it again. Can you have the next one, please? Okay, this is a set of 2, and I would mention titles of my works because for me, making a verse is like writing a poem, and title is really important because I feel it partly communicates the story that the work has. And I always, although these works have happened after my training at Slade, the fetal years of my artistic development, watching those popular cinema billboards in Pakistan, remain at the backdrop of my psyche. And I was looking at this idea of, we don't understand what kind of guy blows himself up and kills innocent people regardless. It doesn't make sense to a normal human mind. But I started looking deeper into it, and I realized that perhaps idealization of violence with man in a heroic way comes from various sources, not just from religious mythology. It does come from popular cinema, from Hollywood. We quite often see the action heroes are covered in blood, and they are screaming or shouting, or even if you see sports coverage of men, if they're injured and they're celebrating or shouting something, there's something heroic in the way they represent it. So this is called placebo for my warrior, and I was talking to my brother-in-law, and he's a doctor, and I said that how do you treat mental patients who come to you with the first indication of mental problems? As we were discussing suicide bombing. And he said that for depression, the first thing we do is, we don't give any pills. We give them a placebo. And we say, you know what, this is the pill you want, and this is going to fix you. And he said, quite often, almost 5 out of 10, a man believes that the pill has worked, and he comes back and says, yes, it's working, and I'm better, and I'm happy. And I found it so amazing that a placebo can take you away from this idea that you are in trouble or you're in angst. And I was looking at all these, the Punjabi cinema posters from the 80s when I was growing up, calling Mola Jat. They're all about true men being violent, ready to sever. And I feel that somehow it has some sort of popular connection with religious mythology, man, rather than being macho or being heroic, or creating bloodshed to solve something. So they are injured men. And hypermasculinity, coming from a kind of very matriarchal family, masculinity is something I'm always, I went to an all-girls school, I don't understand, men are something I came in contact with quite late in my life, and I still don't frankly understand them very well. And I don't understand that how, when you see these images of violence and terrorism happen, what sort of person finds it a rational act to carry out. And also I kind of always feminize men, because that's my way of dealing with hypermasculinity. And I feel that an image of God or godliness is androgynous. An image of Christ, or Christ as an adult, as a child, or Krishna, is almost effeminate. And as if divinity means that the absolute sense of gender shifts. So those ideas are all working at the back of the mind. So there's part one of that. Can I have the next one, please? And there's the second one in the same series. The next one. Now this is quite a, I guess, popular piece, and it's on the cover of the catalogue, The Hanging Fire, of the show that Ms. Hashmi curated at the Asia Society in New York. And once again, I'm discussing aspects of gender, masculinity. I'm bringing effeminate elements to representation of hyper-masculine men. They're surrounded by popular images of how life as it was that I was living, domesticity, rubbish, advertising, objects of grooming, and they all kind of create a repertoire of humor, meaning, and wit. Yeah, this is quite a known piece of mine, and it's called I'll Be Safe in My Own Mind. And my titles come from informal sources as well. This was something that was in Simpsons, that Bart Simpson does something really terrible and he hides and says, actually I'm safe here. No, I'll be safe in my own mind. He kind of withdraws into his head and disappears completely. And this occurred to me after I was hearing that, the Taliban in the northwest were cloning the image of self and they were targeting barbershops. And I started creating this image of a man kissing his own reflection as making up a multiple of himself. And once again, all the codes of domesticity, these perfect cakes that I was supposed to bake, that now I was a parent, and the men's lifestyle pressures living in the West and rubbish and everything was part of it. Can I have the next one, please? This is called Justice League, as Justice League of Heroes, as the Marvel characters. And this was these American presidents carved on Mount Rushmore as a very macho act of these male faces, larger than life, on the rock, on a mountain. And I was discussing facial hair as where they stand in our judgment of who's what and how people are framed culturally, and the association of violence, and how West has, very recent, the West has rejected facial hair. Up to voting time, you have to have facial hair. Okay.
I want Kamila, you have written very, I think, sensitively about Naiza Khan's work. And I think that the reason where I was very keen that you should participate is, I said, you're a writer who responds to images as well. And I just would like you to kind of sum up for us as to the connections between what you see as image making and the kind of image making that you do.
You know, one of the reasons why I was so happy to be asked to be here is I think it's too rare the opportunities for writers and artists to sit together. But while Faiza was speaking, everything she's saying about being an artist is true of being a writer. The form is different. So, you know, as I'm looking at those paintings, I was feeling huge envy for the fact that you can have it all in a single frame. Whereas I have to write a 350-page novel and any reader can only be on one page at a time. Whereas and I have to decide, first you read sentence 1, then you read sentence 2. Whereas, you know, our eyes can roam around. Of course, we're doing some direction of how our eyes are roaming, but there's a way in which we can. So the production is different, but the impulse seems very much similar. I mean, as a writer, I start with an image. I don't start with an idea. I mean, a novel starts with an image. It has to be an image, and other images come from it. And you kept using the word story as you look. So these are, you know, image and story. I think whether you are a poet, whether you're an artist, whether you're a novelist, we're all working with those as the grounding ideas. And I think in Pakistan it's a particularly interesting thing because we haven't yet decided what the story of the nation is. And there's so many different and competing narratives and images, and what images are allowed even, and what images are not allowed, and what images will be considered obscene, what images will be considered subversive. And I think what, as artists, and I use that as a broad encompassing term, I think what we're all doing is looking at images and in a part, I suppose, wondering about the power of the image. It is, as you said, it is the most powerful thing, and it disturbs people so much. There are certain things they don't want to read, and they don't want to see. And we make them read them and see them. And I think, you know, in your work, that's clearly what's going on. But what's also happening in your work is it's it's coming out of here and out of there. So there are these different angles. And what I love in art forms is that you can approach them from different angles. So if you've grown up in Lahore, you look at some of those images in one way. If you've grown up in one part of London, you look at a certain other way. But whereas if they're those kids who've never left their street and are wearing their shalwar kameez, it will be a different way. So I think that, you know, the multiplicity of ways of coming at those images, I think is wonderful. There's so much richness there, and so much that different kinds of people to respond to.
I have a sort of waves from the people who are supposed to be overseeing what we do and what we say, and I'm afraid that we have overstepped our limitations vis-a-vis time, so we won't have time for taking questions. But I'm sure both of you will be besieged as soon as you leave this hall. And so I'd like you to please carry on with this session, you know, out there. And those who wanted to ask questions could do it personally. But I want to thank all of you for being a wonderfully attentive audience. Kamila and Faiza come back to Lahore over and over again, because the city is enriched by them, and I hope they take back some flavors with them. Thank you so much.